Welcome, everyone. We're in the gathering stages here. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great session. And in fact, if you weren't with us yesterday, we had a great session yesterday as well. So this is a twofer this week. And we're going to probably start seeing that more often, where we actually have two different events each week, because we know people's schedules are a little different. So give you two different options of things to choose from. And as always, the recordings are available online. So I did want, on that note, to just share a little bit as we think about, where we're building this. So first off, just as a quick refresher, we've got the CX on the Rocks website, which is really our community hub. So join us there. Very easy to do that. You just hit join now and fill out a few pieces of information, and you're in. And it's at no cost to you or anything else. And once you're able to log in, you're able to see some great information. So just as a quick reminder, as you log in, you can see all of these recordings. So if you ever miss one of the sessions and you really want to go back and watch it, you can go in here, go into events, and check out past events. And for instance, yesterday's event, the video will be uploaded by tomorrow. Right now it still points to the link, but you can see all of the past events, upcoming events. You can connect with us, see more information about the consultant. So again, great information there, and part of the opportunity to engage with your peers, with each other, and navigate this time of really change within both the customer and employee experience and everything else that's going on as well. So as we're continuing to gather here, I did want to do a quick introduction. Our speaker today, Matt Eagle, he is a repeat speaker on here. He's one of our partners, and I'm real excited about this, Matt, today, because I love your better, faster, cheaper. And not only today are you going to really cover foundationally around those three areas, but then we can break into breakout rooms and talk about them. That's even more valuable. So love the idea. So kick it off, Matt.
Thanks so much, Sean. It's good to be with you all again today. Let me pull up my slides for today. Okay, can you all see my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it.
Yep.
Awesome. So today we're actually building on something I shared in an earlier presentation about pathways to value, better, faster, and cheaper. And we're going to go deeper around the specific behaviors that you can focus on. Culture is all about behavior activation that align to different strategies for creating value through investments in customer experience and better, faster, cheaper. So I'd love to make this interactive, and feel free to add things to the chat as we go. I'm joined today by my colleagues from Journey Spark, Virginia and Nina, so some of you will get a chance to meet them as well in our breakout sessions. So let's dive in. So I'd love to start on a more personal note. Some of you who know me know that my mom is an artist. So I grew up working with my mom as an art teacher, taught me art at a really young age. We had an art studio in the house, and I've always really loved working with creative people. And hint, we're all creative, not just artists. You can see my mom's artwork on my book, The CX and Culture Connection. And we also use the artwork in the intro and outro of my podcast and the branding on the Journey Spark website. And the reason I'm sharing it today is not just because I'm proud of my mom and I really enjoyed teaming with her on this artwork. It's very meaningful to me. But also because it's about emotion, which is really important for customer experience and culture. In fact, emotions we'll see is the glue between your customer experience, your employee experience, your brand, your product. Emotion's really important. And I'm using the word glue, of course, because my mom's a collage artist, right? So what you can see with these three pieces, the motion series, which my mom created after some conversations we had together, is just because she thinks of like artwork and collage as learning to look. She's a design thinker by just intuitively having worked in art for so many years. And I actually think of customer experience like collage artwork. They're layers. You're fitting the pieces together. The pieces have meaning. Collectively, they paint a picture. They're stories that fit together. And what's meaningful in memory is actually what has a stronger emotional connection for you. So the three pieces, emotion, motion, 1, 2, and 3, are actually deconstructed customer journeys. So if you want to learn more about these three pieces of artwork, you can go to the Journey Spark website, and the motion page is available with a link at the bottom of each of the pages. If you want to learn more about the artwork, you can click through to that and learn more about the descriptions of what each of these pieces actually are about. So emotion is the glue. It's what makes experiences meaningful and memorable. Emotion is the operating system of your brain. 95% of our decisions are actually made unconsciously, and they're guided by emotion. Loyalty is actually when you make a decision without having to think about it very much or at all. That's the loyalty loop. And that's where the emotion is really driving your decision making, because you crave a feeling. So a brand, is about the emotions that it evokes for you in your relationship with the brand. The brand promise is effectively a promise to deliver feelings. Your CX, your customer experience, is actually what customers feel about themselves at peaks in the customer journey. And so what's meaningful and memorable, you think of the peak end rule, it's the peaks in the journey and the last thing. The brain filters everything else out. So what's meaningful and memorable is actually what's emotionally engaging for you. And you can be very intentional with your brand about what emotions you want to evoke. And you can think about the physical and digital, or I like to say phygital experiences, and what emotions are you aiming to evoke. And this is really important because the human behavior of your employees is actually key to delivering on your brand promise. That's the CX and culture connection, both directly the way your employees show up in the customer journey, and also the way your employees collaborate with each other to design and improve the customer experience. That culture of experimentation, culture of collaboration, culture of creativity, those are all things that your employee behaviors reinforce. And your metrics like NPS or CES or CSAT are valuable, but they don't tell the story. They don't make all the collage pieces as visible as if you were directly measuring emotion. So that's something I'll talk a little bit about more, is how to build on your system of metrics to incorporate emotion and behavior. And what we're going to focus on today is how to actually get the behaviors that align to your strategy for delivering the right emotions. By the way, the emotions have double the predictive power as NPS on business outcomes. So if you focus on driving the right emotions and create a continuous loop of the right behaviors and feedback, you're going to drive business outcomes. So your culture is one of three elements shown in the triangle here. Your strategy is where you focus for experience design and capability building, which is capabilities are driving outcomes repeatably, through people, process, and tech. So when you build a strategy, you're making choices about who, why, and what, and you're really choosing a way to create value for customers, and that is actually enabled by coherent behaviors. You can see on the right-hand side of the triangle, your culture enables your strategy through your employee behaviors, and change management done with a culturally sensitive approach is actually about activating the behaviors you choose to activate in your organization to get the strategy and the customer experience you want. And then voice of the customer provides a systematic approach about whether you're delivering on your strategy, as well as creating more actionable feedback for your culture efforts. So these three all go together, and this is what drives your flywheel. Journey Spark, our CX and culture connection value accelerator, has 3 modules. You can find more about it on our website. You can see the link there. And the strategy module looks at your leaders and helps you build alignment in your leaders across these different areas, better, faster, cheaper, that we're going to dive into more today. The cultural alignment module is all your employees and diving into, is your culture aligned to your strategy? Now, this is actually really important. We'll spend the most of our time today diving into ways your culture can be aligned to your strategy. But most culture diagnostics that are out there, actually, I'll say all other culture diagnostics out there, other than this one, do not link explicitly to your CX strategy. What's unique about our Value Accelerator is it's designed to identify gaps between your culture and your CX strategy. And your CX strategy should be aligned to your mission, vision, purpose, and values, and bring them to life through very specific behaviors. And then the VOC module is with your customers. So if you do all 3 modules in the accelerator, it gives you really useful insights combined with things like personas and journeys. And definitely check out Dave Seaton's sessions on customer journeys. That's a really strong complement to the content we're going to go over today. So there are 3 different pathways to value. We chose these 3 based on body work I've done with my colleagues when I was a partner leading the CX team at PwC and Booz before that. But it actually comes out of outcomes-based selling. If you're creating value, you're going to do it either on better, faster, and cheaper. And a lot of agencies use this model. I don't have any pride of authorship. The reason it's useful is because it's broadly adopted, right? A lot of companies understand that if you're going to create value, it needs to be either better or faster or cheaper. And your secret sauce, your strategy, is the way you combine them. You think of it like the triangle. You need all 3, but you're going to spike on one of these value drivers. Think of it as the long pole in the tent. Is your long pole in the tent better, faster, or cheaper? So I would say Apple is better, Amazon is faster, and Walmart is cheaper. Their capabilities, their brands align to one of the 3, but they all address all 3 of them to varying degrees. So better is about innovation and beyond the product experiences and a lot more. Faster is about speed to market and about responsiveness and removing friction. A lot of Sean's excellent work is about removing rocks, which contributes to all 3 of these, by the way. But a lot of people focus on removing friction as a way to get faster, but removing rocks also helps with better and cheaper, because you think of your cost of quality as cheaper. And cheaper is about, the important thing is here, it's not about making things cheap. You want actually to value engineer lower costs without lowering quality. You want both. And you want to remove a friction to lower your cost of quality. So there are a whole set of capabilities that sit a level below better, faster, and cheaper, which we've incorporated into the strategy module of the Value Accelerator. So you can see where your capability maturity is and which are the importance of them across your leadership team to see how aligned you are across your focus for better, faster, and cheaper. And what's also really important are these cornerstone disciplines. Think of a cornerstone discipline as skiing downhill in your pursuit of your strategy. If you don't, no one wants to ski uphill. So it takes a lot of effort. Why is it skiing downhill to use a cornerstone discipline? Because it's something that's already gaining adoption in your organization, where there are mindsets and there's space for change in your organization, it's a cornerstone discipline because you're building on it. You're starting there and expanding. Now, you might say all of these disciplines are really important, and we're working on them to varying degrees. But just like you can't do it all, better, faster, and cheaper, you need to make some choices. It's really helpful to start with one of these cornerstone disciplines, hence cornerstone. You build on it, and then you could expand to a second or more of them. So design thinking is all about learning to be curious, learning to ask questions, learning to improve things. And there's a whole set of design thinking skills and mindsets and behaviors and rituals that you can, strengthen in your organization as a path to pursuing largely better. You could argue it straddles across the other ones, but I personally believe that design thinking aligns really well to better. Whereas as agility aligns better primarily against faster and cheaper quality management and data-driven decisions, depending on the way you do them, could align to any of these. And customer success, which is not just a team in an organization, I like to think of it as a discipline, that actually aligns better to better and faster, pun intended. And we're going to see their behaviors that align to each of these disciplines. And when you pick a pathway to value and a cornerstone discipline combo, it actually helps you pick the right behaviors to focus on and drive into your organization that align to them. And our Value Accelerator has a library of over 125 behaviors that we built up over decades working on CX and culture that actually align to this. So if I know that you're focused on faster and agility, I can tell you the 15 to 20 behaviors that are most important to your organization to drive CX improvements, and use that as a starting point to tailor the right set of behaviors for you so that you can pick them and help decide how to drive the right system of change to drive adoption of those behaviors. So you don't have to start from scratch and you can ski downhill. So as an example, just showing a few possible combinations and some example behaviors. If we take design thinking combined with better, here are 4 examples. Ask why more often, listen to unspoken needs, challenge assumptions, collaborate across disciplines. There's many more behaviors, but I've just picked 4 examples here. If you really focused on building habits in your organization, so people are clue conscious, they spot when they themselves, they're mindful when they're engaging in the behaviors or opportunities to practice the behaviors, they can coach others on the behaviors. What you want is to make them habitual so that people are proud to engage the behaviors and are proud of others, and you're rewarding others and you're spreading them. They become stories around the behaviors that you want to spread. We'll get into system of change later in the conversation. And then there's some examples for faster and agility, like MVP thinking, fail fast, learn faster, break things into smaller chunks. These are examples of agile behaviors. And again, skill sets and rituals go together with behaviors, but behaviors are actually the key to culture. If you focus on training and skills, you're not going to get the same impact as if you focus on behavior. And behaviors, again, are what evoke the emotions in the customer journey. So that's why it's so important to focus on behavior, not because it's just the core of culture, but because it drives the CX you want. You can also see some examples for cheaper there. Hopefully this gives you some food for thought. We're going to do our breakouts in a few minutes, aligned to better, faster, and cheaper. So keep in the back of your mind which of these breakouts you think is more interesting or relevant for you to focus on in the breakout groups, because you're going to have to pick one in a minute. Doesn't mean you're committing your organization to it. It means you're going to commit 20 minutes to it. Okay, so it's a reversible decision, as Amazon likes to say. Okay, now here's an example just to reinforce. There's multiple ways to combine disciplines with strategies and pathways to value. This is a retailer client that prioritized better and customer success. We actually spent some time thinking about the metaphor. Deep metaphor analysis is really powerful as a way of understanding unconscious thought. One thing I learned from Luc Carbone. And the metaphor we aligned on is like a coach. Okay. And the 4 emotions that we identified as part of the personas and journey maps. If in this retailer example, you can have a problem or a project. It's this consumer electronics. Um, and the four emotions we discovered from listening to lots of calls and observing and talking to people, both customers and employees, and looking at the unstructured data, we actually found that the emotions we wanted were relaxed, supported, confident, optimistic. It's like a crescendo. In this case, if you think of a call that's like either 6 minutes or 30 minutes, if you get all four of these emotions, you're going to get the outcome you want. Okay. And the behaviors evoke these emotions. When we looked at the behaviors we wanted to train people in and drive adoption of, they actually align to these emotions. Now, for your business, there'll be different emotions than these. They may overlap somewhat, but if you look at an emotion wheel, there's around 20 to 30 emotions that matter depending on which emotion wheel you use. And you can pick the ones you want. And our VOC module actually helps you pick the emotions that are most important for your customer along the journey. Together with other research, it's really helpful to prioritize the emotions you want, and then you can pick the right behaviors. And what we did here is we adapted their approach to customer listening once we knew the emotions and behaviors. So in addition to questions like NPS and other elements of the value bundle, we then started asking about the degree people feel relaxed, supported, confident, and optimistic, the closed-ended questions. And then open-ended questions, what did they do to make you feel this way? You can mine that with AI. And that allows you to build much more insight into what people are doing or how the digital experience contributes to those emotions. The reason you ask the behaviors open-ended is you don't want to lead the witness too much and constrain them on the behaviors. You want to hear what they actually say in their own words, whereas the emotions we prioritized. So it's actually good to ask those as closed-ended questions. In addition, you can then start um, um, adapting your approach to training and QA and habit building in the organization to reinforce the behaviors that get you that emotion. So customer listening is a complement to change and behavior adoption to create a more actionable feedback loop. And you can use platforms like Qualtrics or Medallia or Question Pro or YakTrack or others. This is not platform specific to take this type of approach.
Hey, just Dave's got a really good question, and kind of
Oh,
goes back to
please.
better, faster, cheaper. So maybe before you break into, we do the breakouts. But kind of talking about picking one. Can you pick two out of the three, or is it really you kind of have to focus on one of these, not for the meeting, but as an
I
organization?
understand.
Yeah.
So think of it like a triangle. You need all three. Okay. But which side of the triangle is longer? Okay. So you really want one of them to be, I know if you make all three equally long in an isosceles, what is that? Isosceles triangle that has three equal sides. Am I going back to my ninth grade now? Um, so you can correct me if you want, put that in the chat. And like you could do that, but I think more likely than not, one of these is going to be more important to your strategy than the others. So if you go back to the what makes you special, are you really focusing more on better, more on faster, more on cheaper? And its strategy is about choice.
Hmm.
What's your big idea? What are the things you think are most important in your mission, vision, purpose to bring to life? Your CX vision is making choices about, and the language you would use, or if you do user stories and agile, the types of stories you develop are going to skew to one of these. Now, you may have a library, you may have a backlog of things you're doing in your CX that are a portfolio across all three of these, but you're going to have one of them is more important than the others. So that I think it's important to choose in strategy. Okay. So let me go back. Question for the group. Who in the group, whether in chat or come off mute if you like, does anyone in the group think they're focused more on better today? Maybe
That
put in the
that would
chat. Go ahead.
yeah, that would be me. So, Matt, you and I have been talking about this framework through CX on the Rocks for a little while, and I've been thinking about it in terms of my own business. And I've chosen, my focus for journey mapping to be better. I want to create the best, deepest, most insightful journey maps in the industry.
That's excellent. Yeah, I echo that, Dave, that like a lot of what I've naturally gravitated to at Journey Spark, with my partner Virginia and the team, is to help people create a better experience. But a lot of times, companies want to become more agile. They want to want to basically behave more like a lean startup. So some companies are pivoting towards becoming more faster. Like one data SaaS company that we've been working with is legacy better, but wants to increase faster. So their culture is more aligned to better and weaker on faster, and they're trying to pivot to strengthen faster. So you can think of this as change. You might say we're really good at this, but we need to strengthen this and potentially increase the length, the side, change your triangle, so make faster the longer side of the triangle. So that's, that is a possibility, and it's hard to drive change like that if your culture is aligned more to one than the other. Then changing your strategy doesn't solve the problem unless your culture adapts too. And so culture is hard to change. It's good to know up front where you're aligned and whether your culture is more aligned to better, faster, cheaper. That our diagnostic tool helps with that. Are you more like this or more like this? There's 20 questions, and you can figure out whether your culture is more aligned to better, faster, cheaper. And the way you drive change is you actually drive adoption of good behaviors that crowd out bad behaviors. You don't drive culture change by punishing bad behavior. You drive it by increasing habits around good behaviors and being intentional about the behaviors you want. Anyone else want to share whether they're focused more on better, faster, or cheaper?
I'll jump in. What I will say is right now, I think based on the economic environment, et cetera, I'm seeing more companies focused on cheaper.
Yep.
They're taking a lot of, cuts. We've talked about layoffs are pretty high, especially for CX kind of roles, and which is the epitome of ignoring better and focusing on cheaper, like cutting headcount and things of that nature. And I think it's a pretty rough environment because of that. Financial, and whether it's the cost of money right now with interest rates still so high, et cetera, it's pretty rampant. I see some nods. So anybody else kind of thinking the same thing?
Yep.
It might sound weird, but I think I'm focused on all three. My competition tends to take an extremely long time to help the clients that I serve, right? Sometimes I go too fast and it gets me in trouble. I like to think I'm better by being faster and cheaper. If anybody has got to know me, I'm very, very direct. And I tend to do that with my clients. I tend to cut the chase, and I shorten my consulting engagements by engaging quickly and enabling kind of a blitzkrieg method of finding the challenges and opportunities for improvement quickly. So I know it goes against the rules, but I focus on all three.
Yeah, I think, Skip, a lot of people actually do try to do all three to varying degrees. I would encourage particularly the marketers, folks in marketing, product, customer, service, and digital, or other leaders who are, because it takes a team to drive the customer experience. I love Todd Unger's the four corners of the X framework. The fact that you've got, product, brand, customer, and service as different aspects of customer experience. It's not one corner of the X. Todd was a great podcast guest. He spoke at the CXPA event recently. So, it is important, I think, to choose a dominant one, because otherwise you end up diluting your efforts in the organization. You're doing a lot of things at once. If you try to adopt 100 plus behaviors all at the same time, that's really hard. So we have a poll coming up. Thanks for adding that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that's been made. I think, you know, aspirationally, I think organizations try to get a little bit better, but it ultimately ends up being some variation of faster or cheaper, with cheaper being something that an end user or consumer can easily quantify, understand, and assign a value to that.
Yeah. I want to build on something you guys have been saying, which is there is a lot of focus on cheaper right now. I think, this is something that Chris will probably talk about next week with AI in his session, his second session. But a lot of people are using AI aligned to cheaper and maybe secondary faster and then less better. There's an opportunity with all three of them to leverage AI. Think of personalization and next best content and tools and workflow could be either better or faster. But a lot of what people are doing in the call center, trying to reduce call volume or use digital deflection or, with bots, it's all in automation. It builds on prior efforts to use digital to drive cheaper. And that can be useful, but it can also be very expedient in the negative sense, where it's a very short-term focus. So I think that if your goal in the long run if you look at your mission vision and you're more aligned to better for that, and all your time and effort is going into being cheaper, then you're not going to realize your vision for better if you're spending all your time and money and resource and talent on being cheaper. So that can be an expedient path that doesn't actually deliver on your brand promise. And that's cognitive dissonance, where CX efforts are essentially misaligned or spread like peanut butter across things. So getting intent right up front, clear. In culture, it's really useful to drive from mission, vision, purpose, and values down to behaviors, because that's where the rubber meets the road for driving change. The same thing's true in strategy. If you don't make choices about how you're going to create value, and then as we were discussing earlier, drive the behaviors that align to that strategy, you're not going to get the results you want. Okay. Let's dive into some behaviors that align to each of them, each of these disciplines. Okay. Did people see the results of the poll? It was like slightly more better than faster.
Yeah, I actually voted on behalf of two clients I'm working with. Both of them are positioned as premium products in the market. And one of them is really diving into understanding their service experience, because the product is the undisputed best, but the service experience doesn't live up to the quality of the product. And so we're mapping those journeys right now. Another of my clients has, again, a premium product in the space, and their main source of competition is a free product bundled in to by another vendor that has this giant suite of products, right? And so they're trying to position themselves as worth paying for this product because it's so much better than what you can get for free as a bundle with another vendor you've got.
So that's
That
an
makes a
interesting
lot of sense,
point.
Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
So Dave, it's an interesting point, because as I think about the question, it's twofold. It's one, what is your focus on your business, or where should you think the focus should be? But what I'm also hearing is, from a client's perspective, here's where we would like to be, but the marketplace and the customers are dictating that we need to be in another one of these lanes. So if you're a premium product, you've already established that, then your focus should be better, else how do you get the price, right? That's that alignment between that customer expectation and what your brand proposition is. And so when we say better, cheaper, or faster, it's also important to ask, how does the client or the customer perceive your efforts? Because that's where the disconnect is. We think we're getting better, but what the client sees is we're just cheaper. or we're just faster?
That makes total sense, JP. And in our value accelerator diagnostic, remember the 3 modules that I mentioned earlier. You go back to it. The voice of the customer diagnostic actually assesses what do your customers think you're delivering.
That's right.
So do your customers think that you're delivering better, faster, or cheaper? And how aligned is that to your strategy? Do your leaders think you're want to deliver better, faster, or cheaper, and specific capabilities within them? There's actually several options of being better, being faster. It's not one size fits all better.
Exactly.
And then what do your customers think you're delivering that? You can look, and then you can see, is your culture aligned to it? So you actually look at alignment across all 3. And what you want to do is focus your energy on improving the things that matter to your strategy, and getting feedback on that over time. Start realigning your customer listening and your behavior activation and change in the organization, so you're constantly reinforcing that flywheel. Let's dive into each of the 3 in turn on the behaviors. What you can see on the screen here are just some examples, again, of behaviors that align to specific cornerstone disciplines for better. So what you can see is if you take a design thinking lens for better, things like designing for simplicity, challenging assumptions, saying yes and, for you improv fans. I did take improv earlier in my life. And collaborating across disciplines. By the way, improv is a great way to practice design thinking. It's something you take multiple times. I've taken improv classes like 4 times in my life for that reason. So like, these are just some examples of design thinking behaviors that you can drive in your organization. To contrast that, say, with customer success, you have behaviors like focus on the big picture, be a trusted advisor, be authentic, be accountable. So the behaviors you pick, and again, these are not exhaustive, there's over 100 of them. The ones you pick should be true to you. And they should be the behaviors that are going to get you the strategy you want with the emotions you want. And then you have a congruence. You're actually skiing downhill. You're driving the behaviors that get you the emotions aligned to your brand, to your strategy. So question for you guys, and then we'll go to spend some time on faster and cheaper. Which cornerstone discipline do you see yourself already leaning towards, skewing towards, if you said better? Do you have an explicit choice on one already where you're driving adoption in your organization? Or do you say, oh, well, we didn't explicitly talk about it, but I see that ourselves more in that one?
Well, I didn't have the right screen. You're asking which of these do I think I already am focused on and doing?
Yeah. Do you look at this and say, you know what, I want to be better, and I think that in what we're doing, we're more aligned to design thinking, or more aligned to data-driven decisions, or, you know, I definitely, you're an AI guy, so I would have guessed you're a data-driven decisions guy, but you tell me. I
think I'm focused on being a trusted advisor and being authentic, because there's so many people, there's so much garbage coming out around AI. I'm really trying to focus to be credible and helpful, instead of just another person who, jumped onto a bandwagon. I don't know how well I'm doing it, but that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I would share with the folks here and on the video watching the recording, is I mentioned skiing downhill. One consideration is this something that already has traction in your organization, right? So like, if quality management is something that already has some support by executives in your organization, it makes it easier as a change agent to have your CX work have impact if you align what you're doing to something that already has acceptance in your organization. There's more willingness to change for something that already has some roots and as a cornerstone discipline. So, if none of them have taken root yet, you have some choices around which one you think will be a good pathway to reinforce your strategy and get acceptance in your organization. So a cornerstone discipline is meant to make it easier to drive change, to get people to have the right mindsets and behaviors in the organization.
I was just going to jump in and just say, understanding where your company is and which one of these leans strongest to what its core focuses are is equally advantageous, right? That way
Absolutely.
you're growing with the current versus going upstream.
I love the metaphor. Ski downhill, swim with the current.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
question on that real quick, Matt. I mean, I think so. What does the company value today? Am I hearing that as the kind of the ethos and
Is
figuring
a
out
tension between value today and importance tomorrow, right? So you don't want to fight the culture. It's really hard to fight the culture, but you also want to evolve the culture. So which things are going to be more important to get the results you want?
That's
So
right.
you have to balance that tension between where we are. That's the thing with culture work. Is that you don't want to fight you know the expression culture eats strategy for breakfast?
That's right.
Why is that true?
Exactly.
Because you don't want to fight your culture.
Well, it's if you're a parent, know that your 7-year-old will soon be a 12-year-old, will soon be a 17-year-old, and ultimately will pick the retirement home you get to live in. So you want to raise a good human. So having a really long-term view as to what's the ultimate potential of this organization. I know today our culture is here. I know we're really obsessed about these things, and we should lean into that, but we should also be seeding the path for them to grow to their fullest potential using techniques like this.
Exactly. So here's some examples of disciplines that align to faster. Nina, did you want to share any thoughts about about these disciplines and the types of behaviors?
Yeah, I'd be curious first to hear if anyone feels they currently are prioritizing faster or wants to start prioritizing faster. I heard Skip, it was an important element of your strategy, but anyone else falling in the faster lane?
Or if not, why not?
Well, if they're not on this call now, somebody is definitely focused on faster. They're just going to listen to it later.
Well,
No doubt.
when I asked my question about 2 out of 3, it's because I am focused on faster. I mean, better would be my primary one, but I also think because of our process, we are faster than.
I don't think it's possible to be a modern CX practitioner and not have master at least as a minor. Because everyone is looking to drive digital and remove friction and like create like Todd Unger calls it the 10-second customer journey, right? I don't think you can be a modern CX practitioner without paying attention to faster. It may not be your primary one, but to your point, Dave, is you could have a major and a minor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something Matt and I have discussed is that, faster might not be your differentiator, but it's something everyone needs to be thinking about. We're all expecting fast nowadays. So again, within faster, you can focus on this from an agility perspective, a quality management perspective, data-driven decisions perspective, a customer success perspective. Dave, I'm curious which of these resonates with you.
My background's in Lean and Six Sigma before I ever got into CX. So streamlining processes, simplifying workflows. I mean, our journey mapping process is very well defined, step by step, and it allows us to execute quickly.
Yeah, Nina, maybe I'll share a quick story here. When one client that I worked with in the tech space was deciding, like, for their CX strategy, do they focus on innovation and how CX enables innovation and getting a premium position, or do they focus on quality management because they had some issues that were both requiring a lot of rework and a lot of challenges, creating friction, and also was driving up their cost of quality. And ultimately, we picked quality as a cornerstone discipline, even though innovation was a really important C-level priority, because we decided that from a change management standpoint, we would start with quality as a cornerstone discipline and then expand to others later. And we had some existing traction on quality, despite the quality issues. They had an organization was familiar with this, more of an engineering culture. And this is a larger company. We actually drove $100 million of measurable quality impact. through the culture adoption, going from 50 people to 500 people to 5,000 people, driving the behavior adoption very intentionally around quality and the behaviors associated with it. And this is a really good example of how culture enabled the CX with very clear measurable outcomes, right? We've talked a lot in the CX in the Rocks community about the collective about the need for linking CX to outcomes. In this particular case, the management team cared a lot about quality management outcomes and measuring the cost of quality, and we were able to demonstrate very sizable benefits to the CFO and COO and the CEO from this effort, and then later expanded to innovation. So there's a path through this, but you pick a path. In this particular case I just mentioned, I cheated a little bit because that was an example that we actually started on cheaper and migrated to faster and better elements around quality. So, your quality management is a through line across all of them. This is very common in particularly in healthcare and financial services, also in public sector, actually, where a lot of the focus is on delivering the same quality for less money, right? So what I would just challenge you on is don't think of it just as the call center and reducing call volume or driving everything to self-service. There are a lot of other cost of quality elements that are not just about digital deflection, that you think about the end-to-end experience. Any last thoughts you want to add for a minute on cheaper before we come back to the system of change, Virginia?
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I think just to underscore it, this has come up and across what many people have said, but when you're solving for those operational sort of breakdowns, you're really solving for pain points in the customer journey. And that's sort of the focus of cheaper, but you get that ancillary benefit when you solve for those problems of improving the customer experience. So it's all, that, as you would say, all part of the self-funding flywheel. There are a lot of benefits coming out of no matter which one of these you focus on. So I think, Matt, we only have a few minutes left, so maybe we want to flip to change management briefly.
Yeah, thank you, Virginia. So you can see here on the screen that we at Journey Spark have a framework for how to think about change in a culturally sensitive way to drive behaviors into your organization, to increase alignment with your strategy for better, faster, and cheaper, and get the behavior adoption that you need to bring your strategy to life. And a lot of companies will focus on the formal and the top down and not pay enough attention holistically to all the change levers. Now, the way to read this chart is it's like formal tend to pair with informal. So standards pairs with rituals, roles pairs with networks, KPIs pairs with symbolic acts, and so on. And bottom up basically means that you're engaging people one at a time in the organization to get individuals to change more as a groundswell. And top down means your leaders are establishing and push. It's like push versus pull, right? And they're all valuable. Research has shown the single most important thing to drive CX and EX is actually hiring. Okay. So from a startup through a mature company, hiring has the biggest impact on culture and on CX. Now, it is an important lever, but it's obviously not the only one. Companies tend to over-rotate on metrics and org design. They're important, but research actually shows that org design is the least impactful lever if you want to drive change, and companies tend to whipsaw between things. So it's not that org design doesn't matter. It's actually that things like rituals and storytelling and commitments and a culture of feedback and getting people to be self-aware and mentalized, like these actually, the informal has more impact than the formal often. And the culture is very driven often by the informal, but we pay too much attention to the formal. So what I would encourage you to do is be intentional about your strategy. Where are you trying to go with better, faster, and cheaper? Use the tools. We can use the tools of the Value Accelerator to help you, if you're interested, figure out where you want to focus and build alignment in your team. Define the behaviors you want, And then being also intentional about the right system of change. Don't do all 16 of these at the same time. Now, an organization is doing these to varying degrees already, and HR is teaming with the business on them. But pick a few, pick 4 or 5 that you want to focus on. And for example, in that retailer example, we focused on making commitments to practice the right behaviors, providing people real-time feedback, expanding the customer listening to incorporate it, and then weaving that into their learning and development programs. We picked 4 things to focus on to drive adoption of the behaviors and scale it in the organization. So that's something we focus on at Journey Spark wearing the culture hat in this group, is helping the members, the collective, think about, how can you align your culture to your strategy and drive adoption of the right behaviors to the right system of change. So there's 3 things you can do just to wrap us up here.
Hey, Matt, there was a question in the chat. Do you have examples of mentalism and symbolic acts?
Oh, thank you, Dave, for pointing that to me. I'm rushing to finish on time, but I want to make sure I address that question. So an example of mentalism is being self-aware. So for example, with an insurance company, I was just at their offsite yesterday, and we actually combined storytelling and mentalism, where we wanted the underwriters at this insurance company to be self-aware and think about how their behavior affects others. That's an example of mentalism. So getting them to tell stories to each other and self-reflect is mentalism. And what was the other one?
Symbolic acts.
Oh, so symbolic act is something people do that have a huge impact on other people. So like you're doing something that you want other people to copy your behavior. So an example, some of you may have read Will Goddard's book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and there's all kinds of stories they tell in that restaurant, 11 Madison. It's a story of how 11 Madison Park became the #1 restaurant in the world. As the manager, he would do things that people were like, wow, I didn't know you could. He left the restaurant, bought a street hot dog, and had the chef make it for someone as a dish on the spot, because he overheard someone at the table said they'd been to New York but hadn't had a street hot dog yet. So that's a symbolic act. It's like, we'll do anything to make our customer happy, and even cooking a street hot dog in the world's best restaurant, right? That was a symbolic act, anything for the customer, right? And those become stories. So symbolic acts are ways that management walks the talk, or managers demonstrate to others, and they become stories. So just to close out, 3 things you can do to apply what you've learned today. One is there's mastermind groups that we're offering. You can find them on the Journey Spark website for masterminds. And you can join one of these groups that get together. We're launching them after the July 4th holiday. So these are new. So you can get in on the ground floor and join a group, be part of a learning journey with others in the collective. And this is a chance for you to meet monthly with others, as well as have coaching sessions once a month. So if you'd like to learn more about that, the costs involved and what you get for your membership, go to our website and reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can also take an approach to personas and journeys to dive deeper on the emotions and behaviors. This is something that I'm teaming on with Dave Seaton. So excited to leverage some of the stuff I talked about earlier and inject into your approach to customer journeys. And then you can also leverage the value accelerator that I shared earlier. Reach out, and this is included in the mastermind group. So if you join the mastermind group, you get the value accelerator included in your annual subscription. So definitely reach out if you have questions. And I hope this sparked some great ideas for you. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Definitely reach out and let us know if you're interested in talking more about either the masterminds or the journey mapping or the value accelerator. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.